What's up, guys? How y'all doing? It's Monday afternoon. I enjoyed that lecture this morning, but I didn't quite finish the chapter 16. So I'm gonna try to finish it so we can go to 15 on Wednesday. So Wednesday's class we'll dive into chapter 17. Excuse me. We'll finish 16. I'm gonna share my screen. We're recording. I am going to share my screen. This is where we stopped at in 16 today. I really, as y'all could tell in class, I really enjoy the endocrine system. Okay, I'm not sure if that's where I want to be at. I think I got it now. I think that's the wrong one. Okay, you should be able to see the endocrine chapter, module 16, the pancreas. So let's talk a little bit about the pancreas. Get where it will let me. Okay, so the pancreas is, we're kind of going through our tour of the endocrine glands here. And so the pancreas is, let me move it over here so I'll be looking at y'all sort of. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Okay, never mind. I'll just go with this. So the pancreas here, cleft-shaped organ in the abdominal cavity, it has both an endocrine and exocrine function. Okay, its exocrine function is to make digestive enzymes for all food groups. Super important, connecting to the common bile duct to the small intestine. But its endocrine function for this chapter has these pancreatic isolates called isolates of Langerhans. Okay, and let's take a look at the thing here. Here we go. So here's what it looks like. So here is a pancreas located under the stomach. We will look at it under the cat. Pull the cat's stomach up and see what looks like Wrigley spearmint chewing gum there, and that's the pancreas. And most of it is, this is kind of misleading, but most of it is this purple cells. Most of this is the purple tissue, the acinar. These are the cells that make all of the digestive juices. But what you see in here are these little isolates of Langerhans. These little structures right here are the minority in here. And inside this, they have three different cells that make alpha cells that make glucagon, beta cells that make insulin, and delta cells that make somatostatin. Now, somatostatin modulates how the cell responds to insulin and glucagon, and also full function not completely known. Insulin is the classic hormone, probably the most, if you throw out the sex hormones, it's probably the most famous hormone, and it lowers blood sugar levels and causes the cells to take sugar in. Glucagon causes the cells to release sugar into the bloodstream, or therefore to feed you in between meals. Okay? So those cells are in the isolates of Langerhans. Okay, but most of the rest of it is making digestive enzymes that go to the small intestine. Okay, there we go. Talks about glucagon increases level of sugar metabolism inside the cell. Glucagon raises sugar levels, metabolic fuel in the blood. Okay, and that's very cool. So we break down, glycogen, which is stored energy, right? And glucagon triggers the breakdown of glycogen by the liver into raised glucose levels in the sugar. Okay, and it also causes breakdown of proteins into amino acids and release of fats, so they can be used for fuel and the formation of fuel molecules in the liver, which produces ketone bodies in doing that. And if you've ever been on a fat-free diet, you end up breaking down fats, and ketone bodies are a molecule made as you burn down fat, and so it's in your urine, so you can actually tell if you're in ketosis by burning that fat. Okay, look at that. During extreme calorie restrictions or starvation, glucagon promotes rapid ketone body formation by one of the capacity of cells to use them. Accumulation in the blood can cause dangerous low levels of pH. Wow. Okay. Glucagon then is triggered by an increase in blood glucose sugar. So after a meal, this is made, thereby telling the body to store the fat, they get the sugar into our cells. Okay. Insulin is this antagonist. Produced and secreted by the beta cells, promotes uptake and storage of ingested nutrients. So it grabs, so after a meal, you're going to need to what? Make insulin, right, to pull that out of the blood, because you're going to have a high blood sugar levels. And so insulin lowers blood sugar levels, glucagon raises it. And it also promotes filling a full synthesis of glucose in the liver, et cetera, et cetera. So it is probably the most famous hormone other than sex hormones. Hypoglycemia, blood glucose levels are too low, can be caused by elevated insulin levels, symptoms, weakness, dizziness, rapid breathing, nausea, sweating. Severe hypoglycemia can lead to confusion, hallucination, seizures, coma, death. That's bad news. So that's extremely blood glucose levels that are too low. Hyperglycemia, levels too high, is a common cause of this is diabetes type 1. This is where the body has autoimmune disease now. We have decided, and we have discovered, and it destroys the beta isolates, thereby making insulin not being made, but destroying your ability to make insulin. Target cells are unable to take in circulating glucose. Glucose is overproduced in liver because of unexposed actions of glucagon, and glucagon also elevate levels of ketone bodies in the blood. So diabetes type 1, which is actually the rare of the two types of diabetes, is the inability to make insulin. And so we can take injections for this. It is a protein derivative protein derivative hormone, so you cannot, has to be injected in the blood. You can't take a pill for this. That's always cool to know. Okay, diabetes type 2 is non-insulin dependent diabetes, and it involves the receptor not responding. So you make insulin, but the cells you've been overweight, out of shape, whatever. Could even be hereditary, obesity is a big one here, and your receptors are not responding to the insulin. So one of the treatments is to give you more insulin, but then over time, you got issues. There are some drugs that develop to help the receptors come back on and work again. And this is an epidemic in America right now. We get a lot of young people, a lot of young healthy people getting this, and we can't explain it with just obesity. So still a lot of research to do. Now, type 2 also damages blood vessels. It's going to lead to increased risk of heart attack, non-healing wounds, and amputations. Damaged peripheral nerves, particularly the lower limbs, can lead to numbness, tingling, and burning in the fingers and so forth, and the amputation of the foot and hands and fingers. Other tissues affected include lens of the eye, capillaries of the retina, therefore, and that could cause eye problems. Kidneys can cause kidney failure. So blindness and kidney failure are common for that. So those two work against each other, and we have a negative feedback here showing that. So blood glucose level is too high, we make insulin to lower it. If they're too low, then we make glucagon for the cells to release sugar. Okay, and there's a nice summary of those. Insulin and glucagon, don't forget somatostatin modulates how cells respond to insulin and glucagon. And then we have a gland, the next very interesting gland called the thymus. Now I have a little fun story of this. So when I took 1984, before your parents were born probably, I went to Ole Miss from Northeast Community College, which is in Boonville, and I signed up for a histology class because all the other biology level, 300 level classes were full, so I didn't get to take physiology or microbiology or genetics or ecology. I dove right into a 400 level, senior level histology class, and this is where I fell in love with histology. And I remember the teacher's name was Iola McTurkey, and she was the first woman biology professor at Ole Miss. And she said, this next gland we're going to talk about, we don't know what it does. It's in the name, but it appears to little babies have a big one, and as you get older, it doesn't grow much bigger, and then by the time you're 60, you ain't got one. Now you guys go figure out what it does. I'll never forget that. And guess what it does? So what we now know is this is a cell in the neck where one of the B cells, one of the blood cells, if you remember the lymphocytes we talked about in lab, are your immune system, B and T cells. The T cells go to the thymus, and this is where they get boot camp or training to be a good T cell out in your body. And so over your lifetime, this is big in an infant, and we'll show you a picture in lab possibly. And by the time you get 60, it's gone. And so these guys like paratroopers jumping out of the plane, and after you turn 55, 60, you quit making them. But it makes a hormone called thymosin that causes more T cells to be made. And so here is a drug we can bioengineer now where we can give people this so they'll make more T cells. Now remember, HIV, AIDS kills the helper T cells. So this could be a drug that an AIDS patient can get to help them make more helper T cells possibly. Okay, but fascinating gland. It's just some random glands here. Okay, then we got some other random ones here. The pineal gland's another interesting one. This is also in the head, in the brain. It's in the back of the brain, and we'll show it to you. And we looked at it in A&PII 1. Remember I talked about you pull down these two little like baby's butts, and you see what looks like a little sac there. That's the pineal gland, and it is also connected to the eye. It's called the third eye in a lot of old books. And it actually makes the hormone melatonin at night when the sun goes down. So at night, the sun goes down, our eyes see it's night, melatonin levels go up, and this is what makes us sleep at night, and it regulates the sleep regulation center in the reticular formation of the brainstem. So this is the hormone that does that. If you've ever been to casinos or Walmart, they have low windows and lots of loud noise and people winning and all this, all of a sudden you walk out of Walmart and you think you've been there an hour, it's been 4 hours. I actually have experienced a Walmart one, and I've also experienced the casino one. One night we went over there and went to a concert, and we thought we'd drop a few quarters after, and we walked out, it's 5 in the morning. Okay, so because you don't make melatonin because you don't know it's night. As soon as you get out, you see it's dark, then bam, the melatonin levels kick in. And some people, some nurses take this that work night shift. You can buy some generic versions of this over the counter. It is also interesting to think about this. The shortest day of the year is Christmas Eve. The longest day of the year is like July 15th or June, sometime June, July. So the days are getting longer in the spring until that summer day in July, and then they start going down, and then the shortest day is Christmas Eve. So people's melatonin levels go down in the winter and up in the summer. And we think the brain is counting that as 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and maybe 12, 13, puberty, let's start puberty, maybe 48, let's get colon cancer, whatever. So this is the body's clocking mechanism. And we mentioned thymosin there to increase T cell production, or thymoquetin means to make. And of course, the gonads, the ovaries and testicles, are testes making testosterone, which is the male sex hormone that does most everything there. And there's some various forms of that, including some made in the adrenal gland. Okay, causes bone and growth, increased muscles, and the male sexual characteristics, including male libido, is testosterone, and female libido is testosterone. And then estrogen is the main main sex hormone for girls, right? That triggers all the female secondary sexual characteristics. And then progesterone is made during her cycle. Okay, and progesterone is going to be one of the hormones that we make during our cycle that actually, it tells the brain that baby's on board so that we won't start another cycle. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the female cycle in chapter 27, I think. Yeah, secrete peak after ovulation and during pregnancy, but if you lose the baby or you go into miscarriage, it just falls off. So progesterone goes up for the 9 months gestation for a while. Leptin's another one here, made by adipocyte cells. These are fat cells, and leptin was thought to prevent overeating in some animals, and we thought we had found the cure for obesity. Give Robin a shot of leptin, and he'll feel full all the time, and he'll lose 100 pounds in a year or two. Well, guess what? It didn't work. We bioengineered it, and it didn't work in humans. It helped a few people that don't make leptin, but it's not for the masses. But it led to other hormones we found in the brain that have to do with feeling full and hunger, for the holy grail of pills that we could take, a pill that would make us feel full all the time and not eat too much and increase our metabolism without hurting our body. Leptin and obesity has been heavily researched. Leptin supplements would suppress appetite. That would lead to weight loss. Unfortunately, it did not work in humans. It's not the miracle weight loss drug. Also, the cardiac muscle, when it gets stretched too much, it can release a chemical called arterionatriuretic peptide that triggers the vasodilation of the blood vessels coming into the heart to lower blood pressure on the heart. So this is a hormone that can lead to helping stop a heart attack from happening or too much heart contraction. And then that led to TPA, tissue plasminogen activator, which is your body's own declutterer that we discovered as a miracle drug. It's not a hormone, but it's a miracle drug in cardiology. We'll talk about later. Okay, but this is one that the heart makes to lower blood pressure. And then the kidneys also make a hormone called erythropoietin. Now, back when I first came to work here in like I said, 1990, 30 years ago, so 1990, 91, my wife had finished up her undergrad, and we had a little extra money that we didn't spend on her, some student loan money. We didn't have grants, we got student loans. We had $2,000 or $3,000 that I wasn't using. And so I thought this biotech stuff was going to blow up. So I went to you can do it there's no internet. So I went to a library and did research papers, looking up these little papers that they had about new companies you could buy from stock. And I narrowed it down to 3 companies that I ended up owning 2 of them, but not knowing the other ones. I looked at Biogen, which is still an active biotech company, and Amgen, which is the largest biotech company in the world that I've never owned. And I wished I had bought that 30 years on that and held it. I'd be retired by now. And then Genentech, which was the largest American biotech company for a long time. It got bought out by one of the European medical companies. But anyway, I bought that, and the drug, the Biogen I had, ended up doing, they had the vaccine of hepatitis, but Amgen was a small company with just a couple hundred people working for it, and their first drug was erythropoietin. And I didn't apply my A&PII very well, because when people start having kidney failure, one of the first things that happens to them, they get anemic. And so this biotech engineered hormone was been able to give to kidney patient people who were having dialysis, and it bought them 10 years, many years before their kidney died, and they didn't get anemic. And this was the first billion-dollar drug for Amgen, and it led them to be the largest biotech company in the world. Now, I haven't done it in a while because I would get depressed, but I bought the Biogen and it went up, and I made like triple my money, or 4 times my money, and my wife had to have a new couch, and I needed a computer, so I sold all of my shares and bought her some new furniture, and I bought me an IBM $3,000 IBM computer. I still have it in my attic today because if I had just sold enough shares to buy the couch and kept the other, last time I looked, I would have about $300,000 or $400,000. Yes, I would be retired. If I had invested in Amgen, it would be worth over $1 million. That initial $3,000 or $4,000 investment. So missed the boat there 30 years ago, and I wish I'd have kept them. Or my new rule is never sell all the shares, always keep a few. But anyway, neat one here. And renin is another hormone that is made by the kidneys when blood pressure is too high coming into the glomerulus, which we haven't covered yet. There's little filters that filter our blood. And it is released in the blood and converts a protein made by the liver called angiotensin into angiotensin 1, which then triggers the adrenal gland to produce aldosterone. And this angiotensin 2 maintain blood pressure by squeezing. Angiotensin causes blood vessels to squeeze down and you increase blood pressure. I was telling the class today, I went to the doctor in Christmas and my blood pressure is too high because I have this angiotensinogen being made and I don't need it to be made and they don't know why it's being made. But I take a $8 a month pill that lowered my blood pressure to very good levels. So anyway, so maybe I have helped myself with my lower blood pressure. Anyway, it's the red stuff. Like I said, I always thought investing in something you know something about. So I was investing in some biotech companies that I knew a little bit about. Vitamin D is another one important there. Here they are listed out for you in the tables. There's the kidneys. Vitamin D is activated in the kidney. And then I'm not going to go over this much, but 3 examples of endocrine control. And this is the ADH, aldosterone, controlling blood pressure and urine output. A fascinating one here. So where urine levels are decreased, that means we're raising blood pressure. And where urine output is increased, that means we're lowering blood pressure. But look how these hormones interact to control blood pressure. And then we had another one here on stress, how exercise can lead to this is your response to stress. So you're stressing your body and you make cortisol, aldosterone, other catecholamines, and glycogen is being produced. Glucagon is being made, and all that to get more blood get more nutrients in the bloodstream. You can watch this video. I think y'all can see it. We might just play it real quick here. I think this is a good one on stress.
When the body is subjected to a stressor, a complex endocrine and neural response takes place to ensure survival and maintain homeostasis. Stress can be physical, like exercise, or emotional, like fear. The response begins in the brain with the activation of the hypothalamus. Neurons in the hypothalamus then stimulate neurons of the sympathetic nervous system located in the brainstem. We'll discuss the effects of sympathetic stimulation in one of the animations that follows. Simultaneously, the hypothalamus also triggers an endocrine response by releasing hormones that stimulate the anterior pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland is located inferior to the hypothalamus, and the two are connected by the hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system of blood vessels. A portal system connects 2 capillary beds. In this case, one is in the hypothalamus and one is in the anterior pituitary. Hypothalamic hormones are released into the hypothalamic.
These are the releasing hormones I talked about in class.
These hormones then travel through the portal veins and exit at the anterior pituitary capillaries to bind to receptors on pituitary cells. CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, stimulates the corticotropes of the anterior pituitary by binding to their CRH receptors. The corticotropes then release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. ACTH then controls the release of corticosteroids from the cortex of the adrenal gland. We'll discuss the effects of these hormones in one of the animations that follows. Another hormone from the hypothalamus, GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone, stimulates the somatotroph cells of the anterior pituitary by binding to their GHRH receptors. The somatotrophs then release GH, growth hormone. The primary effect of growth hormone is to stimulate and regulate growth. It also has a role in the stress response, particularly the response to physical stress, by having multiple effects on metabolism. Growth hormone reduces glucose uptake by skeletal muscle. It stimulates gluconeogenesis, or the synthesis of glucose from non-glucose precursors in the liver. It also stimulates the breakdown of lipids in adipose cells. These effects increase the concentration of glucose and fatty acids in the blood, allowing all cells to use them as fuel for the stress response.
Okay, I think that may be the end of that. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and watch these. We'll go ahead and watch these. Let y'all see them here.
As we learned in the previous animation, corticotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to secrete adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. As its name suggests, ACTH has an effect in the adrenal cortex. The adrenal cortex is the outer region of the adrenal glands, which are located superior to the kidneys. Upon stimulation by ACTH, the adrenal cortex secretes glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, and androgenic steroids. This multi-tiered system of control is called the HPA, or hypothalamic pituitary adrenocortical axis. The most abundant glucocorticoid, cortisol, is one of the main hormones in the stress response. It produces specific effects in the liver, the muscle tissue, and the adipose tissue. Cortisol stimulates lipolysis, which in turn causes the release of fatty acids from adipose tissue and, if necessary, stimulates the breakdown of proteins to release amino acids from muscle tissue. The fatty acids and amino acids can then be used by the liver for gluconeogenesis, which is the synthesis of new glucose.
Okay, we're
The
almost
metabolic effects of cortisol lead to increased availability of fuel molecules for cells responding to stress. Cortisol also has an inhibitory effect on inflammation, therefore allowing the body to deal with the stressor even if it is injured. Indeed, because of its important role in the response to long-term stress, cortisol is sometimes called the stress hormone. The HPA axis is regulated by negative feedback. High levels of cortisol have an inhibitory effect on the release of CRH from the hypothalamus and ACTH from the anterior pituitary. The mineralocorticoid aldosterone has an effect in the kidneys. There, it stimulates the loss of potassium ions and the retention of sodium ions. The resulting increase in sodium ion concentration in the blood also indirectly stimulates the retention of water by osmosis. As a result, the volume of urine decreases and blood volume increases.
just like ADH.
Blood volume is one of the key factors that determines blood pressure. An increase in aldosterone can lead to an increase in blood volume, which can increase blood pressure. This ensures that enough blood goes to our tissues to meet their needs as they respond to stress. In addition to being one of the hormones in response to stress, aldosterone is also essential for blood pressure regulation, as well as the maintenance of electrolyte, fluid, and acid-base balance in the body.
Okay, then we got the last little video here on what we got.
As we learned in the previous animation, corticotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to secrete adrenocorticotropic
Actually, I
hormone,
think we
or
repeated
ACT.
that. We're repeating it. That was a repeat. Sorry. Here's the last one. I didn't change pages.
As we already learned, the hormonal response to stress begins when the hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system and stimulates the anterior pituitary gland. The sympathetic nervous system, in turn, stimulates the pancreas to release the hormone glucagon. Glucagon causes an increase in blood glucose levels by triggering glycogenolysis, the breakdown of glycogen to release glucose. This causes an increase in blood glucose concentration. Other effects of glucagon include the breakdown of lipids into fatty acids and glycerol, and, if necessary, the breakdown of proteins into amino acids. These products can then be used as metabolic fuel in oxidative catabolism and as precursors in gluconeogenesis, the synthesis of new glucose. All these effects lead to an increase in the blood glucose concentration, so it is available as fuel for cells dealing with stress. Other hormones with similar effects on metabolism are growth hormone from the anterior pituitary and the catecholamines from the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla contains neuroendocrine cells called chromaffin cells. When stimulated by the preganglionic sympathetic neurons,
Getting scared,
these
nervous.
cells secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine into the bloodstream. Besides having metabolic effects, epinephrine and norepinephrine also cause an increase in heart rate and blood pressure and dilation of the airways. All these effects help the body tissues receive more oxygen so they can effectively produce ATP and have energy to respond to stress.
All right. What do you think about that? Pretty wild. I'm not going to go crazy on that, but it is worth you seeing. Okay, guys, that's it. And we will start with chapter 17 on class on Wednesday. All right, y'all have a great day. I'll see y'all Wednesday. I'll put this up for y'all on Canvas. Bye.